Hello everybody, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be talking about the 820 patch notes. So let's go ahead and get in here. Now, as always, since I've been traveling for the past month or so, I'm doing these patch notes before the official patch notes come out on Tuesday. If there is a significant change in the official patch notes, I'll write a comment to the video, and I'll just sort of explain my thoughts on whatever that initial patch notes is. This is the way that the vast majority of patch notes are done on kind of the PBE data, with people like Red Mercy and Firewall saying watch out for these things, you know, on the next patch, things like that. So it's not that different from normal. I usually like to wait until the official notes come out because sometimes there's something different, but realistically, you know, 90% of the time it's going to be the same thing. So just watch out in the comments if you're watching this in the future, if there's some kind of crazy new thing that they add into the patch notes that weren't on the PBE. I'll let you know about it. You can also find timestamps in the description. This will probably be a pretty short one, so I don't imagine there will be many timestamps, but there might be. And if you enjoy this content, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe if you've watched several videos on the channel. It really does help with visibility, helps YouTube know that we have good content going on. Okay, so let's go ahead and get in here. All right, so kind of the biggest marquee change of this patch is going to be Ezreal, and I think he's going to be extremely powerful on this patch. Ezreal is already, like, really good if you're good on him. He's very safe. He does good poke damage. He can do good burst damage as the game goes on. He has a very versatile build path. You know, he plays pretty well when behind if he has to, because he has Kleptomancy that can help him generate a lot of extra gold. So yeah, he's very strong. I mean, one of the potential problems of him is he can potentially get bullied out in lane, right? But he does have okay burst. You know, once you get your Sheen, if your Leona engages or whatever, and you're pretty confident you can get the kill, you can always E in, auto, Q, auto, and that's usually about like half of somebody's health. So he has pretty decent burst damage, but he has very nice poke damage too, and that's something that a lot of AD carries that people are playing these days are missing. You've got a lot of short-range champs like Kai'Sa, Lucian, Vayne, all very popular, and they just don't have a very good way to siege most of the time. And that's something that Ezreal is already pretty good at. You know, if you just sit there under tower and you're just A-ramming and you just spam those Qs, you hit somebody with a couple of them, they're probably going to have to leave, right? Because they're going to be at like 20% health. And then that's your opportunity, if you want to, for your team to go in and dive and make a play. So he's already very difficult to get a hold of. He has a very defensive build too. You know, he can get Iceborne Gauntlet and Ninja Tabby if he wants to, and that protects him from things like Kha'Zix, Talon, and stuff like that. So he's a little bit more durable than a lot of other AD carries, puts out similar damage, he's very safe with positioning, so he's already strong, right? The only thing that holds him back is a lot of people just don't maximize his kit. They stand too close, they don't dodge skill shots with his E. A lot of misplay going on there. But basically what they're changing here is his W, and this is going to accentuate what he's already really good at. And this, I think this might just push him over the top, because this is going to give him supreme objective control now, which he's already pretty good at, and it's going to give him even more burst potential. So what they're doing now, the old Essence Flux, when you threw it, the W, it did some damage, but it also gave attack speed to everybody in a row. Now this was actually relevant. If you're taking towers or taking Baron or whatever, and you throw that attack speed on a couple other people that are trying to take that tower, that attack speed is real. It does help. It didn't really fit too thematically with his kit because it doesn't buff himself unless you W and then E into the W to get the attack speed, so you have to be kind of tricky with it to get it. And it just didn't match his sort of poke damage, you know, pattern that he does. But now what he does is he throws this orb. It sticks to either an enemy or an objective. Now, as far as I know, this is a tower. I don't think it applies to Baron or Dragon, but I'm not entirely sure. I'd have to see. I watched a quick little video on it. I haven't tested it myself on the PBE, but I watched a quick video on it, and it looked like they were just doing it with towers. But pretty much, it sticks to the target, and then whenever an ability, an attack or an ability detonates it. Now, I don't know. I think you still have to auto-attack towers. I don't think you can throw this from a distance, and I don't know the range on it. It doesn't say it here. But I don't think you can throw it from a distance and Q to hit it on a tower. I think you still have to auto, based on what I saw in the video. But it sticks to a tower, and it does a flat 75 with a 0.7 AP ratio, level 1 magic damage ability. Now, I'm saying at level 1 because this is going to be at level 1 for most of the game. right? Because you're still going to max your Q, I believe, and you'll max your, well, definitely Q. But then I think E will be your next max, just because you want that cooldown down, because that's your major escape tool that you have. And that does pretty good burst damage, too. So, you know, you really want your E to be maxed out second, I think. But even at level 1, it's got a 0.7 AP ratio on it, which is really nice. So, I'm not sure what the old, let me see, I can look it up. I've figured out to get around the League Wiki of problems. I don't know why it like has problems loading and moving around on my computer, but if I just type in like individual sections, then I can actually get it. So I found a workaround. I mean, it isn't that much more damage, honestly. Like, this is a 9-second cooldown if you're just like hitting a champion with it, right? So this says 250 base, and with a 0.8. And the new one does nothing on hit. You have to hit them again. And it does 250 with a 0.7. And it gives you some mana, which, like, in the laning phase will be okay. So really, like, the damage component, and this is on a 12-second cooldown. The damage component against champions... Hey, thanks, Nick, for the sub. I appreciate it. The damage component to champions is really, like, negligible. Right? So it gives attack speed to allies, which is cool. But the extra damage to champs, yeah, really doesn't matter that much. So it would seem. And this can hit multiple people, too, I believe. Allied champion. Now, this used to lower the attack speed of enemy champions, which was really interesting back in the day. So it used to speed up allies and lower enemies' attacks. But that'd be way too overpowered this day and age. That was like back in Season 1, Season 2, I think. So yeah, I mean, the poke damage against champs is not really going to be that much. It's the same thing. You actually have to hit them with an extra ability, so it makes it even harder to trigger it. But the thing is still going to be, like, that you can do this to towers. This is going to give you, like, Zig's power, you know, against these towers, right? It's going to add on an extra 75 damage plus this 0.7 AP. It also has AD, so if you have a lot of AD, it's going to trigger that too. So, you know, that's pretty big, especially when you start combining this with, like, Sheen procs. You'll start taking towers pretty quickly. Now, a lot of, like, the videos out there are going to be, like, full 6-item, you know, max AP, you know, tower taking, and that's just not going to be the case in most games of what's going to happen, but... So, I don't think that necessarily he's going to be, like, super overpowered to the point where you have to nerf him, but I think it will be pretty strong. Like I said, the ratios are very similar to what they are currently against champions, so I don't think it's going to be doing that much more against champs. It's harder to trigger it because it takes 2 abilities instead of just hitting with 1. Ratio is basically the same. But I guess it does allow for a faster rotation. Like if you hit this from a distance and stick it to him, I mean, that's the same damage. So if you hit him with the old W, it's the same thing. I don't know the range. Like if this range is further, maybe. But anyways, I think it's going to be similar damage to champs. You will take towers faster, though, which is really nice as sort of a solo pusher. Now, that attack speed does allow you to take, like I said, to take towers faster as a group if it's like you're just open taking a tower, or to take barons or dragons a little faster. But as far as just like if it's just you in the lane, if you're split pushing, or in like a 2v2 situation when you're bot lane, it does add like nice burst from a safer distance. So yeah, I think he'll be strong. I think he'll definitely be a top 5. For people that are good with him. You will see a lot of bad Ezreals, because anytime they buff him up or get a new skin for him or something like that, then, you know, people that have never played it before come out of the woodworks to try him out. Okay, let's talk about some of the other changes. I don't think they're going to be... I mean, these are there aren't a lot, but they are meaningful changes, so that's good. Because they are actually targeting things that are, like, good in this meta. Instead of, like, last patch, I think they just buffed a bunch of, like... The Kha'Zix change has been pretty consequential. I can't remember the other stuff. I don't think the rest of it mattered that much. I can't remember offhand, but that's probably a hint that maybe it didn't matter that much, other than the Kha'Zix one. And now, Kha'Zix, they did sneak out and add a 0.2 ratio onto his passive. They didn't say that on the PvE. They just said the other things. That was one thing they snuck in on the final version that wasn't on the PvE. Anyways, with Ahri here, they're increasing the cooldown on her ult. I think that's a good choice. I mean, Ahri is very consistent right now. The problem is she's very safe, and it's just very easy to play her and to be very effective. So that's the issue with Ahri, is I think in solo queue she's over the top. She's picked quite a lot. In fact, she's the most picked champion right now, and she has a 54% win rate. And that's just like, if you are a top 5 champion in both pick rate and win rate, then there's a problem, I think, with the champion most of the time. Especially something that's a fairly low skill cap, where like auto-filled people are playing her all the time. Usually if it's that high of a pick rate, it's going to be like auto-filled or off-rolled people that are just taking it as a nice safe pick. I mean, Malzahar is kind of in that territory too. I think Malzahar is really dangerous right now. But he isn't picked as much, although I've been seeing him a lot lately. So I think it's nice. Bring her down a little bit, make her think a little bit more about her ult. I mean, 110 seconds is ridiculous for an ult that's that impactful. It's 3 flashes, does a ton of damage if you go for an all-in with somebody, and allows you to reposition to land your charm and basically one-shot people. So, like, you know, she can go in with her ult, throw her charm. If she hits it, great, they're dead, you know, probably, or they're really, really injured, because you're going to be able to hit your full Q rotation and your W on them. And then if they're low, you can chase them down and kill them with your ult. Miss your charm? Okay, whatever, just, you know, R back out. No big deal. So that's the problem, is that she can use it both offensively and defensively, and that just creates some serious balancing problems. So, I mean, like, you can lock her down with things like Malzahar, or there aren't a lot of other hard CC mids, like Annie maybe. So there are some options for her, but she's just too safe. So I think 130 seconds is pretty fair, especially just at the early levels. So she still goes down to 80 in the end game. But in the early levels, this seems a bit more reasonable. Now, at least it's a little more risky if you do it, even though they may not kill you in that one sequence, because they're not going to be able to punish you unless they have hard CC. At least they'll have an extra 20 seconds to try to punish you. So I think that's fair. Okay, looking at Evelynn. I haven't seen Evelynn as too much of a problem in Plat and lower. I know she's good in, like, Challenger solo queue. I mean, anytime, I mean, I guess she's got like 52% in Plat. Anytime you have a champion that's like permanently invisible, it's just a problem in solo queue, because it adds so much extra strain to vision control. You know, if everybody's not buying control wards, then she can run through and pick people off pretty easily. 52%, pretty high ban rate, like the second most banned champ. Fairly low pick rate. I mean, Graves, I would say, is more of a problem. So he has a much higher pick rate. But Evelynn's just obnoxious. So I'm glad they're taking down her damage just a little bit here. I haven't seen her a lot, but when you do see her, she's just really annoying. So yeah, and I mean, they're not like completely destroying her. Once again, this looks like it's just mostly at the early levels, losing 25 damage off your ult. Now, losing 20 damage off of your Whiplash is pretty significant. So that's like 45 total damage, potentially. I think this is... You obviously max your Q first. I'm not sure if this is second max or if you max this last. But either way, lowering her damage a little bit, probably okay. I mean, the thing about Evelynn, too, though, she's so risky pre-6. If she gets invaded by Kha'Zix or Graves or... Lee Sin, Nidalee, like, there are a lot of champs that can invade and punish her hard. So she is risky in the first 6 levels before she starts going off. I don't know if they needed both of these, honest. I think just maybe one of them would have been fine. Both of them might be, because she doesn't do that much else. Like, she had, you know, she's got her charm, but it's pretty easy to dodge. There's a lot of mobility in the game right now. This is already on a pretty long cooldown. I don't know. It is what it is. I think it'll be okay. Hey, thanks, Cheeto. I appreciate the sub. So, it's okay. I don't think it'll warp the meta for most people that much. But yeah, so she's out of contention a little bit there. So, probably a little bit overkill on her. Obviously, she has no pro presence whatsoever. I don't think she's that much of a menace completely, but she's okay. Probably fair. I think they should have done more to Graves than this. This is pretty... Well, they are nerfing Dark Harvest down here, so maybe they're thinking that Dark Harvest plus a base damage nerf. But like 3 AD, this is just like a meme when they do these changes. It's like, does that really matter? Is that what it's going to come down to at the end of the day? I mean, maybe if somebody walks away with like 15 HP, you know? But like 3 AD just really seems like a joke to me. I don't get it. Like, why not at least 5 or 6? Just make it a flat 60 base damage. I don't know. But like 3 seems really inconsequential. But maybe with the Dark Harvest nerf, the problem is he has other things he can do. Like, I'm pretty sure some people still go fleet footwork on him. I mean, most people are going Dark Harvest, it seems. But, I mean, some people are still doing Fleet. And I know Fleet, he was really strong with just Fleet, you know, beforehand. I think he still has had a high win rate for a really long time this season. Ever since they buffed something about him to bring him back into the meta back around like 8.10 or 8.11. Let me see. Look that up really quick. They did something to buff him, and he's been relevant pretty much ever since. 8.11, okay. So I kind of got it. They lowered his attack damage a little bit there. Okay, that's actually where they nerfed him. So they just basically reverted. Wait, what? Okay, so this is the new cooldown. Our cooldown decreased. Our cooldown decreased at early ranks. Okay, so now it's going... What? That seems weird. Either way, they gave him some buffs. Oh, the smoke screen thing. I was back in 8.6. Okay. Where it, like, pops up faster. Okay. Anyways. So, maybe it was after they nerfed the tanks, he just started coming in. But either way, I think he'll be okay after this. I think he'll still be a strong champ. You know, like we saw over here, he's got 20% representation, 30% ban, pick ban, and a 52% win rate. That means he's getting played by people that don't Graves that much, that don't jungle that much. He is like the autofill champ. You know, this is just like, Lee Sin's kind of the troll champ. People just play him because they like to play him. But Graves is like the serious, I'm autofilled, but I want a chance to win this game, you know, type of champion. So, yeah, he'll be okay. He'll still be good, but I think it's good to nerf him a little bit. Okay, Nami, they're nerfing her heal. Now, it's not the damage, it's just the heal by 5 early, and then 15 in the mid-game, and then 25 in the late game. This is probably good. I mean, Nami is pretty obnoxious right now. She's sort of like a new age type of Janna in the sense that, like, she's pretty safe in the laning phase. You can just walk up and just spam W on people. It's really hard to counterplay that unless you have an all-in, you know, a really comfortable all-in. But if you, like, pair her together with somebody else that's really strong, then it makes it very difficult to punish her early on. So she's got almost a 54% win rate. It has come down a little bit. It was 54 flat. Now it's 53.5. And it's the fact, I talk about this a lot on my support tier list video, that her W, like her damage and her healing are on one ability. So you just press one button and you get to damage and heal. So that means you get to keep your 2 other spells in reserve. So if they try to go back on you and punish you for that, then you still have your other 2 as reserve. So, you still have your E, you still have your Q, and if your R's up, you still have that. Versus, like, Sona, who's the closest comparison, I think, she has to use 2 different abilities. She has to use her Q to harass, and then her W if you want to heal stuff back. And that costs even more mana. The W is obscenely high on Sona early on. So, you know, Sona's much more balanced around, like, you can harass early, and you can heal, but you're gonna run out of mana really quickly if you try to do that. So that's tough. Now, Sona does scale better as the game goes on. I'm not sure if it was entirely necessary with Nami to, like, make her late game suffer that much. I think they could have, like, nerfed her early game and then kind of normalized it going into late game to return to its similar levels. But she's pretty strong throughout the whole game, too. I mean, you've got hard CC with your bubble, your wave. It's not like she falls off a cliff late game. So, I think nerfing that's probably fine. You know, they are nerfing Dark Harvest, which is going to, you know, nerf Misfortune early on. So that's going to nerf some of the early game pressure. Some people that she's obnoxious with, but she'll still be pretty strong, I think. It doesn't affect the damage, it only affects the heal. And you got to remember that heal can bounce twice. So if you heal an ally first, and then it damages someone else, and then heals back again. Remember, she wasn't really affected that much by the plus healing and shielding nerfs of 8-12, because she's so good with Athene's Unholy Grail, which got buffed on that patch. So you got to remember this can bounce around. So it's not just, you know, 160 heal. I guess that does affect the bounces too. Because it's going to do less off the bounce. So, you know, I guess this normally would do after the bounce. With 30 AP, it's 15% less on the second bounce. So, you know, that's probably dealing closer to 300 something healing off of a bounce on one ability. That's pretty strong. So if you lower this, that's going to lower it maybe... Well, definitely off the double bounce there, it's going to be 50 total less healing. Somewhere thereabouts, between 40 and 50. It's going to be 15% less. I don't want to do the math right now, but that's pretty significant. I mean, so if she was healing like 350, now she's going to be healing like 300 every time she does this. And that doesn't take into account the bonuses that you get from AP and from plus healing and shielding. And from things like Revitalize. So, it's going to be pretty significant as far as the healing goes. In particular, if you pair her with a weak laner where you're not getting the bounces, where it's just the W. So, like, you're with a Vayne and you just have to heal her because she keeps taking terrible trades because she wanted to pick Vayne and a Draven. That's going to get even more rough. So, I think it's good. I think it's good overall. I mean, some of the winners there, you know, obviously are going to be things like Sona. Where is Sona? Am I just, like, zoning out? Okay, yeah. Do win rate. Stuff like Sona might become a little bit more popular. I still think Nami will certainly be very viable. But Sona might start creeping in a little bit more, because Sona does outscale her in the late game, and now that Nami's early game is going to be a little bit less punishing, then maybe Sona can sneak back in there. So yeah, I don't think it's going to I mean, it'll hurt champions like Lucian. Lucian's the best with Nami. Maybe it'll hurt Braum a little bit, just because Braum is good against Nami, but I don't think that's going to matter too much. Braum's already not, like, a huge threat at Platinum and less. So, it'll be okay. And pretty good nerf. Sion, HP regen lowered, okay, whatever. Doesn't matter. I mean, Sion's not that amazing in solo queue, I don't think, but he is pretty good in pro play. And then finally we have Dark Harvest. So, I kind of like that they're nerfing Dark Harvest a little bit here. It's just like, it does too much damage early on. Especially after they nerfed Electrocute for junglers. Just moving over to Dark Harvest, I think a lot of people kind of discovered that Dark Harvest does a lot of damage. Now, it takes more time to charge this up, but they are nerfing, you know, the base damage from 40 to 20, so you're losing 20 damage off of it early and 20 damage off it late. So, that's pretty legit. One thing to keep in mind is it does also include total essence collected and 25% of your bonus AD. So realistically, when you're Dark Harvest hitting somebody, you know, in the late game for 400 or something, losing 20 is not going to be that big of a deal. But early on in the laning phase, you know, not getting the Dark Harvest, not getting as much out of Dark Harvest could matter. So, I mean, you know, the champion that comes to mind immediately is Misfortune, who's going to be hurt by this, because she is someone who can use that, like, every time it comes up in lane, so she's using it constantly. Whereas I think a lot of the other Dark Harvest users, in my experience, are junglers, tend to be junglers, and so they're not going to be using that Dark Harvest, you know, every single time they clear a monster or whatever, right? I don't think. Every time they clear a large monster. So a lot of those Dark Harvest procs are kind of going to waste as you're charging up. So, So yeah, I think it's going to hurt Misfortune the most. Misfortune is still a really high win rate champ. I haven't been seeing her as much lately, but I think that's just kind of a fluke. I think she's still really strong. Yeah, it's 54%. So kind of like, you know, kind of like Graves, kind of like Nami, kind of like Ahri. I guess Graves only had 52%, but like any of these champs that are like very heavily picked and have like a 54% win rate, probably need to be toned down a notch. So, like, I was playing with my buddy Roach Legs yesterday in a duo queue, and he was just like, he like 100 to 0'd this Ahri, just shot her in the face with his Q off a Dark Harvest proc, and it just like did like 1500 damage or something. Now, he had a ton of damage, but it does get a little excessive at the end, and the fact that it can apply to towers is also pretty strong. So I think that it does an unreasonable amount of damage, particularly on champions like Graves, Kha'Zix, Misfortune. So I think it's okay to nerf that. Misfortune will still take it. It'll still be pretty good. You know, Kha'Zix, like all these champs will still probably take it. If it's bad on Graves, Graves can just go Fleet Footwork. You know, Kha'Zix can go back to Electrocute if he has to, although I think Dark Harvest is probably better. And Misfortune, if it got really bad, she could go back to Comet. But overall, I think that's good. Now, so good changes overall. I don't think it's going to like completely shift the meta too much, but they did kind of ding a couple of the people that have been near the top and are kind of problematic. I think they did a pretty good job of balancing to where it's not going to push them completely out of the meta. But you know, they just brought them down a little bit. Now, they did say next patch they are thinking about nerfing Kai'Sa. They didn't say how, but in just one of their, like, Riot Corner, or whatever they call it. They were thinking about nerfing that. Who else was in that announcement they were thinking about? Let me see. Quick gameplay thoughts. I think it was Tank Pyke. I said this was coming, like, for sure. Oh, this is where they're talking about what they're changing here. Sion, Evelynn, Jhin. Okay, so they did not show a Jhin nerf. But they're talking about nerfing probably his interaction with that rune. So they're looking at lowering the ratio. They wanted to buff Corki, but they said they were going to do that in the next patch. And they are working on Karma. Let me see. Home here. There we go. Quick gameplay thoughts. So yeah, next patch, they are thinking about nerfing Kai'Sa. They didn't say how, but part of it might be making it more difficult to unlock her upgrades, which is fine. I mean, in theory, I don't think Kai'Sa is that much of a problem in solo queue. She is really good, but she only has a 50% win rate. So she's picked a lot, she's banned a lot. She's very good in pro play, but she's okay. I mean, I could see a nerf coming online and being all right, but like a lot of these other, like Misfortune, Jhin, Lucian, Draven, all of these guys and gals have a higher win rate than she does. And Ezreal is going to go up. Now, Ezreal might only go to like 50% or something because he is still going to be hard to play, but I don't know. I wouldn't nerf her too much. They might, I mean, maybe they feel like they have to do it for pro play, but I think pushing her power spike back a little bit, like I could see making her Q upgrade cost like 120 bonus AD, or just something to get it outside of the range of Storm Razor plus Pick when she goes in Gensu's. I think that would be reasonable. I don't know how much you would have to increase it for that, but I think that's one option. Another thing that I heard some people talking about, like I think in the comments of this, that they could do is like make it kind of like Vayne, to where her passive doesn't apply with like Hurricane Silver Bolts or like Hurricane stuff, so that you can only put it on one person at a time, kind of like Vayne Silver Bolts. I think that would be a pretty reasonable change too. That would solidify her as like a good duelist, kind of like Vayne, but it would not allow her to have as much sort of team fight damage going on. Tank Pyke, I mean, we knew this was coming. I talked about it. You just look at Pyke, and he doesn't have like the most phenomenal win rate, but at the same time, it just feels wrong. You know, when you do like 80% of Pyke's health in the laning phase, and then he just goes invisible and comes back, you know, almost full health because of his passive plus Revitalize. It's just kind of ridiculous. So, you know, I don't think he's over the top, but it just feels unnatural. And I said also that was a deliberate thing they wanted people not to do. in the design, and they set it where they don't want people to build tanky. That's the whole reason behind his HP to AD conversion, is they want people not to build tanky. So if I were them, I would just hit his scaling, or like his healing off of his passive. Just give him less gray skin, or whatever they call it, gray health. You know, I don't know what it currently is, but maybe drop it by 20%. Let me see. It's something right now, and it scales with AD too, which is, I mean, I guess that's okay if you really want him to build AD. But it's a lot. Yeah, it's like 30% damage taken, so stores his gray health up to such and such amount of his maximum health. So yeah, I mean, this number doesn't look that high, but it just feels wrong when you look at it. If you've ever seen it in a game, like, it just feels like he's almost unkillable. Or like here are ways they could deal with it. So they could reduce the amount of healing that it does. They could lower the amount of time that you have to trigger it. So maybe if you don't trigger it within 5 seconds, it goes away, or something like that. So you immediately have to try to go invisible to get it. And then that way, you know, he couldn't be sticking around in a fight and just waiting for it to stack up a lot. Maybe it starts decaying after a couple of seconds, kind of like a Janna shield or something like that. Like, for the first couple of seconds, if he goes invisible, he can heal it back. But after that, it starts fading away over time. So that could be one thing. It could have a cooldown on it. So it could be, you know, whenever you use it, whenever you start healing with the gray skin, then maybe you can't use it again for 30 seconds. Or something like that. I think that would be reasonable. So he can stack up the gray skin, but you can only use it, you know, once every 30 seconds. If you're constantly taking harass, then you can't constantly just pop in and out of bushes and heal it. You can use it for burst healing, you know, once every 30 seconds, but after that, you can't do it anymore. So I think those are all reasonable ways to go about it. Is either just lower the flat number on it, make it disappear in relatively short order, so that then it would be good against poke, but it wouldn't be as good against all-in, or if they could hold you still, you know, for the timer to run off. But they need to do something with this. I think this is, like, really the one thing that's just ridiculously obnoxious. Now, they are talking about some degree of kit effect changes, modifying the HP to AD effect on his passive, and scaling changes or whatever. It's like, no, that's not the problem. He's not tanky because he buys, I mean, sometimes he does buy Knight's Vow and he gets some armor and AD out of it, but that's not the problem. Like, the core items that are really a problem on him are like Frozen Heart, because it gives you so much armor. And so if they change the HP conversion rate, it's not going to affect Frozen Heart, which is like his core big item that he gets right off the bat. And he could just get another item, you know, if they want to change the scaling and make it unfavorable. Right now, it's basically a 1-to-1 ratio. You get the same gold value in AD as you would get for AP. But he could just go for something like Knight's Vow into, or not Knight's Vow, Frozen Heart into something like Gargoyle Stoneplate, or something like that, and get around it. Just get a bunch of armor and stuff that doesn't give HP, which just converts over to AD. So I think they need to nerf the healing on his passive. Not the ratio, not whatever, the scaling, just nerf the healing on it. And that would probably be fine. And then Corki was going to get some kind of buff. They haven't really said what it is. He needs some help. He sucks. He's bad. I mean, I think that just doing something with his rockets would be helpful. I mean, I wouldn't mind. This would be interesting to see if, like, his rockets could trigger on-hit effects or something like that, kind of like Ezreal. If his rockets triggered on-hit effects, but only on the first target hit, so if it hits multiple targets, obviously you don't want something that could, like, trigger Sheen on multiple targets. But I wouldn't mind it triggering on-hit effects. That would make him sort of similar to Ezreal. It'd give him a lot more, like, viability with his poke builds, because you could, like, poke with Lichbane or poke with Trinity, because he loves getting Trinity anyways. That's what I would like to see. Make his rockets a bit more useful. Or, like, just allow him to have an AP build, like, give him more AP ratio, since, like, his attack damage already converts over to AP. Like, why not just, like, give his rockets, like, a bigger ratio, and then he could get things like Leandri's to help poke, which I think would be cool. I mean, going something like a Leandri's Rylai's on him, I think might be really interesting with his rockets, and just playing around, like, his poke like that. Yeah, he just kind of sucks. I think they had said they were going to do more for, like, his package to make him, like, this really, like, burst power, window of power type of champ. We'll see. And then they're doing, like, some pings and some other stuff. So, they didn't do anything about Urgot, but a lot of this stuff is, you know, has a lot of lead time on it. You know, it takes them a couple of patches to sort of get the data from solo queue and pro play. I don't think he's that much of a problem in solo queue. He's at 52%. I would still like to see them hit Irelia and Jax a little bit. I know Sammy's like, no, leave Irelia alone. Irelia's really oppressive. She really is. In pro play and in solo queue right now. I know they've nerfed her like 50 times, but it's just changed things about that champion. I think Jax and Urgot are really rough too. Darius feels really strong sometimes, but I think he's kind of in an okay spot. I still think like Camille and Fiora are strong, but they're okay. They're balanced. So yeah, I mean, Hecarim is someone to like keep track of. I've seen him some in the jungle, but I think these would be like definitely in the crosshairs of stuff that I would like to see nerfed. Jax and Irelia. Like any champion that's like ends up being very tanky, even though they build mostly offensive items, and they can like go 1v3 and kill a lot of people. With like not that high of a skill cap, kind of a little skill to it, but not like, you know, if someone like a Yasuo can do that, it's like, okay, you know, because that champion's super risky, and he usually doesn't get that tanky. Where's Yasuo on here, by the way? And who doesn't have a high win rate. I think Akali's actually in a decent place, and like Yasuo is in a decent place. But yeah, these two right here are just super problematic. Who else would I like to see? Just thinking about my thoughts on who needs some kind of adjustment. They are nerfing Graves a little bit, that's fine. Talia, she's okay. You don't see her that much, but I think more people should play her. I do think she's still strong. Shaco does have a high win rate, but he has a low pick rate, so he's just basically one-tricks that play him. So I'm okay with Shaco. The jungle's overall in a pretty good spot. I think Kha'Zix is... I mean, his win rate's not, like, super high, but he does feel oppressive sometimes, but he can feel really bad sometimes, too. So I think the Dark Harvest nerf's probably okay for him. Same thing with Rengar. I think mostly they're just Dark Harvest abusers. They might have to nerf Dark Harvest a little bit more. But yeah, everything else I think is pretty fine. As far as I'm remembering right now. Yi is always a little problematic, especially like gold and lower, even in platinum sometimes. Because people just don't, they just play their favorite champions, and they just don't pick CC. And yeah, that's a problem when you're against a Yi. But yeah, Ahri definitely needed a nerf. She got that. I think Talon's probably okay right now. He's pushing the envelope, but I think he's okay. Fizz is probably okay. Malzahar is becoming a problem. I think they might need to nerf him a little bit. I'm not sure like how, but it feels like he's definitely coming back into the fold. He's so dangerous because he's so reliable. He's just like a point click ult, you know, catch people out. He can push well. He's got pretty good utility in fight. So they might need to do a little something about Malzahar eventually. Maybe make his ult on a little bit of longer cooldown or something. I don't know. He already got nerfed a lot last year, so I would be watching him if I was Riot. LeBlanc's probably fine. She's really oppressive with good players, but we already talked about Irelia. Everything else is probably okay. Like Cat has a high win rate, but just played by specialists. I think everything else is fine. Mid lane. Just going over real quickly, just sort of what I think is sort of a problem. I think Draven, honestly, could use a little bit of a nerf. Like, he doesn't get played. He's so oppressive in so many matchups. He's like the bully of bullies. Scales super well. I mean, even if it's just like nerf the extra gold that he has, like don't affect his like in combat power if you want him to be that early game bully, but just like nerf the amount of gold that he gets off of killing people. or something. I mean, I know that's kind of like who he is. He's like this super dangerous champ, but or just like they could nerf his interaction with lifesteal as well. That could be a thing, because right now, like, his axes apply lifesteal, like his bonus axe damage. They could make it to where the bonus damage doesn't apply to lifesteal. It's just his axe itself, something like that. Or lower the ratio on his axes, so like give him high base damage on him in lane, but just don't have him scale as well. I don't know. He like maybe he's not too dangerous, but it just feels like he just like really overpowers a lot of lanes, and he's just very abusive, particularly for one tricks. So, I don't know. Maybe he doesn't need it. Maybe it's okay. I think Lucian's probably okay. He is a bit on the strong side, but he's probably okay. Misfortune, that nerf of Dark Harvest is probably going to bring her into line. Jhin is okay, I think, for the most part. A little on the high side, but it's probably okay. Kai'Sa, for professional play, like we said, a little bit down. Twitch is potentially... I mean, I guess they can leave him alone. He does fail a lot in lane, but if they nerf some of these other bullies, they would have to nerf Twitch a little bit. He's really obnoxious later on into the game, but he's probably okay. And then the rest of these champs are okay. Some buffs to some of them, particularly like Kalista, Ashe. You know, some of that stuff would probably be helpful, but if they were going to nerf another 80 carry, I'd probably say Draven, and then a little bit, and then I would probably keep my eye on maybe Lucian and Jhin. But I think bot lane overall is fairly healthy. There's like 5 really good bot laners. If you don't play one of those, then you're kind of screwed, but if you do, you've got some options. And as far as support goes, I think support ecosystem's pretty good. Nami is the one outlier that I think probably needed a bit of a nerf. They are nerfing her. Tank Pike probably needs a little nudge to his passive healing. But everything else is okay. I'm okay with Thresh. Like, Thresh is hard to play. You know, a lot of the, like, prime time, like, good supports right now are on the more difficult side to play, like Thresh, Pike, Rakan. I think those are all fine. I think the AP supports are okay. Leona's okay. I think support's in a pretty healthy spot. I mean, just look at these, like, win rates. Like, there's so many different types of champs that have, like, a 50% or higher win rate. You know, you've got a really good representation. You've got tanks in there. You've got Leona, Taric. Even Maokai's kind of creeping in there. You've got your enchanters, your Nami, your Sona up near the top. They're almost always enchanters are going to be near the top because they're just the most consistent. And then you have some of your AP stuff, like your Zyra's. Brand is somewhere much lower, I guess. Wow, that much lower? Where is he? Am I just overlooking him? Oh no, he's higher than Zyra. Okay. I was like, what? Okay, so yeah, you've got Brand, Zyra. So yeah, I mean, you have a pretty good representation, I think, of different supports. So I think the support meta is pretty healthy. Just Nami, a little ding there, and, you know, maybe a little bit to the Pike healing. I agree with all that. Okay, well, that's going to be it for this video. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to leave that like and subscribe if you enjoyed this content, and I'll see you next time. Have a great day.